Hi students, so this is our first lesson in the third module, which is the atmosphere. You guys are going to see a lot of carryover from the last lesson in module 2, which had to do with heat transfer. When you guys scroll to the bottom of the very first screen, I recommend that you download your guided notes or you use the ones that your teacher sent you. When you fill these out, you're able to use them during quizzes and also on your module exam, which is what we use then the guided notes are what we use to make your study guide for the module exam. So as we know from lesson 5 in module 2, radiation is the way that energy gets from the sun down to Earth because it's the travel of energy through space using electromagnetic waves. But there are a bunch of different types of waves that come from the sun. So some of these waves are going to be visible light that we can see, and others are going to be infrared radiation, which is just a fancy word for heat. And the final type of rays that come down are going to be ultraviolet radiation, or UV light rays. And UV light is very harmful if you guys go outside without sunblock. It's the thing that causes you to get a sunburn. So from the last module, we learned a little bit about climate change. So we have climate change because the Earth is slowly getting hotter over the course of time. And one reason that this happens is because of the greenhouse effect that the atmosphere has on the Earth. So let's look at this picture to break that down a little bit more. So the sun sends energy down to Earth through this yellow arrow. Once the sun's energy gets to Earth, it does a couple things. So first, it could be absorbed by the land, by the water, or by the atmosphere itself. And if it's not absorbed by the Earth, then it's reflected back into space. But due to the atmosphere, some of that reflected energy is cycled back down into Earth. So with all of this energy that comes down into Earth, not all of it is going back out. So because this energy is getting trapped in the atmosphere, it's cycled back through again and again, which is why we have a raised temperature in the Earth. So there are some differences between the land, the water, and the air in terms of temperature and how fast they heat up and they cool down. If you guys live near a coastal town, you may be able to see these differences more easily than someone that lives further inland. So there is a reason that water takes more energy to heat than the land does. This is because water has a higher specific heat. And all that means is that it takes more energy to change the temperature of water than it does land. So that means that once water is warm, water will take longer to cool down and get rid of the heat. So like I said in the last slide, less energy is required to raise the temperature of land. So land cools and heats more rapidly than water. If you guys are able to go to the beach, this is one good way to experience the differences with land and water. So if you guys go to the beach on a warm day, the sand will get very, very hot during the day, sometimes even difficult to walk on. But then if you come back at night, it cools off very quickly and you're able to walk on it more easily. But if you're to go in the water during the day and then again at night, which I do not recommend, but if you were, that water is going to stay about the same temperature throughout the day. So air comes into contact with the land or the water. Think about wind. So when that happens, there is heat transfer through conduction because there is touching. So if the land or water is warm, the air above it will become warm because they'll come into contact with each other. On the other hand, if the land or water is cool, the air above it will then become cool. Heated air will rise because it is less dense than the warmer air around it. But if that air becomes cooler than the air surrounding it, it will sink because it's more dense. So that rising less dense air and the sinking cooler air is an example of convection. So think about convection happening higher up in the atmosphere, and then conduction will happen when air comes into contact with that land or the water. So it needs to come into contact with a different substance. And finally, water is very much like the air. So cold water will sink because it is more dense, which allows that warmer water to rise to the surface. This convection will cause deep ocean currents, which comes out to be a global conveyor belt, which is what this picture is representing. So why did these differences happen? That's because the Earth heats unevenly. So you'll notice that the Earth is tilted on its axis. And because of that tilt, the equator will get more direct sun rays than the poles. And because the equator gets more direct sunlight, it's going to be hotter. So this uneven heating will cause wind. So wind is created by differences in air pressure. So I want you guys to think of air pressure very much like density. So when we have convection currents, we know that warm air rises and cool air sinks, and that creates a convection current. This movement also creates air pressure. So when there's lower air pressure, there's going to be lower density. And then when there's higher air pressure, there's going to be a higher density. So they have a relationship that is very similar. So in order for wind to blow, or for you to feel wind, there's going to be differences in density or differences in air pressure, and that's what creates wind. So it's going to be wind going from high to low pressure. You guys may have heard of something called the Coriolis effect, and the Coriolis effect happens because of the tilt of the Earth. And what it means is that winds north of the equator are going to curve to the right, and winds that are south of the equator are going to curve to the left. So that means if you guys were in a plane and you were traveling, that pilot is going to have to keep redirecting the plane in order for it to go in a straight line. If the pilot were to just go with the wind, it would end up curving slightly, which would not allow them to get to their destination. So let's look at the different types of global wind patterns. These global wind patterns are going to be important for you guys to have on the module exam. So what I would recommend is that you work with your teacher in order to come up with some type of a picture diagram in order for you to fill in the different types of wind patterns. So let's start in the middle. So we're going to start with the doldrums. We are going to start with the doldrums. There we are. So the doldrums are a region by the equator where warm air causes low pressure. So this means that the area is going to be cloudy with almost no wind. And the reason that there's no wind is because there's no change in the air pressure. So in order to have wind, again, we need changes in air pressure or in density. So from here on out, we're going to start looking at wind patterns that occur above the equator and occur below the equator. And we're going to be able to see when they occur based on the lines of latitude. So that's these right here. And you guys are able to figure out what latitude is because it's going to be the distance from the equator. So sometimes you guys may have heard in social studies that longitude goes up and down and latitude goes around and around. But if you can remember that the latitude will go with the equator, that'll be your best bet. So let's look at the trade winds. And these are steady winds that were once used by sailors to navigate trade routes because they were so reliable. And these winds are located at 30 degrees north and south of the equator, where the air is cool. So this means that the air is going to sink towards the equator and winds are going to blow from east to west. So that colder air is going to sink towards the equator where there's less dense air in order to make that wind, because there's a difference in densities. The next set of winds are called prevailing westerlies, and they are located between 30 degrees and 60 degrees latitude, north and south of the equator. And they blow from west to east as air moves from the polar region. So this is when the poles are going to start getting involved, and these polar winds are going to start moving towards the equator. So all around the Earth, there are something called jet streams. And these are narrow bands of strong winds that happen throughout the Earth. And they move with the Earth's rotation, moving west to east. And meteorologists will also talk about them because storms follow these jet streams. Also, when pilots move from one coast to another, east to west, they are able to save time and fuel if they're able to get into a jet stream. So the polar easterlies are the last large group of global winds. So these occur in the north and the south poles, and cold air sinks here and moves away from the poles. And the Earth's rotation makes these winds blow from east to west. So like I said at the beginning of this is a lot to take in, this particular interactive. So again, I would work either with your teacher or draw this in your notes to make sure that for the module exam, you have a picture of the different types of global wind patterns. I always recommend that when you get to the end of the lesson, you open up the Talk Like a Scientist and you copy and paste all of these words into your guided notes. The vocabulary is very important in Florida Virtual School, so the more that you understand this vocabulary, the better off you'll be for quizzes and module exams. This week we have an activity, so make sure you go see the other video to learn about how to do the activity.